For joining me on this sunny Saturday here in Edmonton is where I'm currently presenting from. We have a few more rolling in here, so I just would like to welcome you all. And as we start today, if you could just make sure you have your pen and either a journal and a paper. I would love today to be interactive. If you can turn your video on, I would greatly appreciate it, as I love to see who I'm talking to, and I think we could have a really special 45 minutes. So I'd like to start today with the land acknowledgement, as it is important in the spirit of truth and reconciliation practice to acknowledge where we are and the opportunity to gather. So currently I am on Treaty 6 here in Edmonton. I grew up in Treaty 8 in Peace River, and from a very young age, celebrating the land and the rich history and First Nations people and the Métis and Indigenous culture has always been a priority in my life. So I'd like to honor the rich tradition of gathering that we experience and that we can celebrate with reconciliation practice as we move forward with everything we do. So today I'm excited to be here again with Swim Alberta. It's been a crazy year, but this has afforded us the opportunity to do so many wonderful things when we maybe have been out of the pool. So today we're going to focus, I'll go into the outline a little bit here shortly. We're going to focus on what that getting back into the pool looks like in addition to your mental wellness. So a couple things, just housekeeping. I would love to start out, and if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat box where you are today, just so I know, and maybe what swim club you currently participate, or just where you are in Alberta. Then I have an idea of who I'm speaking to. I encourage you all at any time to stop me and ask questions. I love conversations and collaborations when we're working together. And if there's something that you genuinely want to know, put it in the chat box. Jackie's going to help me kind of moderate so that we can make sure you're taking away some really practical information. So I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, okay, Whitecourt. Tegan or Tegan, thank you. I want to make sure I pronounce that right. We got Edmonton Keanu coming in. Excellent. So we got a few people. Tegan, great. And Red Deer. Okay, so a couple things we're going to talk about today. There we go. We're going to focus primarily on mental wellness. Anytime we get to talk about returning to play and returning to train, I think in our current world today, it's important to honor comfort zones and pushing outside of them a little bit. We have an activity that kind of lends itself to goal setting and highlights mindset and purposeful practice. And then at the end, I want to make sure I give you all some space to ask some questions. As each of you are from a different part of the province, you're on your own training journeys with maybe different challenges. We have a unique opportunity here today to talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges you may face. And I guarantee that if you're having that trouble or that problem, someone else in the group is here too. Our last webinar focused on resilience and mental wellness too. And I encourage you all, for those maybe who weren't able to attend, to check out Swim Alberta, sign up for the newsletter, as we're doing some great collaboration and partnership work with mental wellness resources. So if there's anything that you want to learn more about or that you think might be beneficial, they have a whole toolbox that they're making available. My co-presenter, Elaine Hing out of Calgary, her and I are doing some really cool work with Swim Alberta, and we invite you to check out a lot of the resources and start these conversations. Some of you who are younger, maybe following Swim Alberta on Instagram, really engage there too, because there's a lot of information that is accessible that you can start dripping into your own training practices. And whether we're in the pool or not right now, I think we can always be working towards that next great swim. And there's lots of content there that can guide you as you move forward into returning to train, whenever that might be. Okay, so mental wellness, there's a whole bunch of things that fall under this category. And as you can see here, we've picked some little infographics kind of to just say, where are we? We know we've been in the COVID roller coaster for a year now. There's a whole bunch of emotions that go with it. There's been the topsy-turvy, in the water, out of the water. And we understand that with these new restrictions that have come out, for some of us, it's been very challenging to adapt to the in and out of the pool. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time today reminding you all of some of these tactical things that you can work on, the tangibles that you can still do out of the water that are just as meaningful to your growth and development within swimming and then other areas of your life too. So where are we now? Well, we're a year in. We are hopeful to get back in the water as soon as possible, but we also know that lots of you who maybe have been training out of the water have worked on a few of these really great things. You've been able to kind of control the controllables of some of you may have heard that catchphrase before, and being able to focus, whether it be on Zoom with coach support on your weight training, your physical growth, being in a routine. That's something that you may have worked on. But there's a couple other areas that I thought I would point out today that might be valuable. So we know that you're going into summer holidays. Whether exams are happening or not is probably dependent on your school. So there's some additional stressors there also with the new restrictions. So we kind of just wanted to point out a few things that you might want to consider that are really great training practices as you move into your competitive training in the fall or summer or whenever we get back in the water. So there's lots of sunlight out. It's great to be able to be outside, trying other activities and being open to different types of physical activity. And we know in the research, when you have access to vitamin D earlier in the morning, earlier in the day, even that natural sunlight is very helpful, and it affects your quality of sleep. So being outside and being able to just try new things, walking, some of you might have access to outside camping, biking, all those things are so good for your physical and your mental wellness that we want to make sure you're tapping into those other opportunities. The good old alarm clock there in the corner, something that we can always be working on, not just quality sleep, but bedtime routines. As an adult now, I would have laughed if someone told me that when I was 15, 16. But when I look back to myself in sport, it was that pre bedtime routine that helped me be successful on those early mornings. Now, unlike you all, I didn't swim quite at your level when I was 15, but I was playing another sport that had me on the road a lot as a young adult. And having a bedtime routine for me was absolutely essential to success. So for those of you maybe who are, struggling with sleeping, maybe learning how to shut your screen off at an earlier time, what can you do to kind of get into your preparation and your performance mindset? Is it putting the phone away earlier? Is it maybe reading for a while, doing some mindfulness? There's some great apps out there, Headspace and such. The Calm app is great. What are some of those other things that you can do that are really meaningful for your sleep? Oh, I have a great comment. Can't even get my kids into a bedtime routine. Yeah, it takes a long time to practice. And I think this is no one size fits all for everybody. There's going to be many times where you have to test out what works and what doesn't. So being patient, and I think Steve made a great comment about the long daylight hours, being able to black out your sleeping areas. I know that's something I do. I have a sheet up because for me, it's like, well, if I don't know what time it is, then I'm more likely to get into that routine. So for those of you who are younger and maybe still struggling with sleep or being in a routine, just write out what you do. Take a look in your journal and actually go through your routine. And then the next night, do the routine and take a minute and go through it and say, well, do I actually do these things? Do I brush my teeth for 2 minutes? Do I check my Snapchat before I go to bed? Am I saying goodnight to my family? Are you even aware of what you do? Okay, so I'm going to encourage you all to take an opportunity to practice that, because this is the perfect time so that when you do get into that performance part of your cycle, September, October, etc., you have that at least a little bit more figured out. And I know for some of us, those early mornings in the pool, especially come November, December, when we don't have lots of daylight, that's when it's super hard to get out of bed. So even if maybe minimizing your screen time, start with 10 minutes, 50 minutes before, 40 minutes before, and then work backwards. That's something that might be helpful with the mental wellness as you practice your sleep routines moving forward. Let's just see what we got here in the chat, because I like to, well hydrated. Thanks, Steve, for bringing that up. Yeah, so the nutrition and hydration piece, those are controllables right now. You know, we're going into summer, so it's so good to have an ice cream and a popsicle and all those yummy things. But as you're outside too, making sure you're staying hydrated, you know, you're wearing your hat, your sunscreen, all that. Those are all those little tangibles that you can do to make sure you're taking care of your body and then your brain as well. Okay, so I just want to take a minute. Is there any questions about mental wellness? And I'll just differentiate the difference between mental wellness and mental health. Mental wellness falls under our scope as mental performance consultants, and mental wellness is about taking care of you mentally, just like you do your physical wellness. Okay. Any questions from my athletes in the group about things that you might be able to do and work on from the mental side? I just want to open that up. Okay. Anyone wants to jump in, please feel free. So TikTok before bed, yeah, and you get sucked into it, and all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. I call that the evil of YouTube too. I can't help myself sometimes. And you know, you maybe take 2 minutes thinking, oh, I'm just going to check social media, and all of a sudden, an hour later, your life goes by, and you're like, what did I even watch? So try to like set a timer. That's something I've encouraged my athletes to do in the past. Don't cut yourself off cold turkey, because then you're probably wanting to get back and check on things or engage with your friends, etc. So I recommend like set a timer so that you're not totally void of it. I think the cold turkey method might work for a little while, but then all of a sudden you want to check it more. So give yourself a timer and say, can I check my social media for 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes before bed, make sure I have no contact with screen. So it's an opportunity to practice some of those things while you have time here this summer. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to comment on? I just want to make sure that I give you all an opportunity for mental wellness. Okay. Oh, one more thing. Okay. Thanks, Lauren. All right. So the Swim Alberta newsletter, they have a great little partnership with Believe Perform, and I wanted to just point out this infographic, that has been sent out in our recent newsletter. Okay, so for some of us who may choose to work on sleep right now, this is a great little infographic that can get you thinking about your sleep patterns. So as you can see here, there's a few points of interest. It highlights the importance of light, maybe noticing the worries or potential anxious thoughts you have. What kind of temperature do you like when you go to bed? Is sound helpful or harmful? Some of us can fall asleep with noise, no problem. Other of us need silence. You know, your laptop, your iPad, those devices, do you keep them in your room, or are they outside, maybe in your backpack? And then your phone. I think that's really important. Some of you use your phone as an alarm. I do as well, guilty of that. So I try to set some parameters and boundaries with do not disturb. So this is a great opportunity for you each to maybe do a little mini reflection and go through what your sleeping habits are, just like you might do with your nutrition, your bedtime routine, your physical training. Take kind of this time as we're not in the pool to be able to practice and question some of these things that you're currently maybe working through as an athlete right now. Okay. So moving into change and our year of being adaptable and working on some of the things we've been asked to change and to be resilient over. I want to highlight the importance of comfort zones. I think we've been playing in and out of them a little bit, and it's something that affects our learning and our ability to learn. And when you start looking into research about mindset, Carol Dweck's work, you start talking a lot about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And I think there's a lot of cool connections that can be made to comfort zones. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Tegan, I just want to say thank you very much for pointing out the Apple bedtime feature. For those of you who don't know about that, that might be something to check out. Okay. So challenging ourselves to question what we're doing and the normalcy of what we're doing and our automated behaviors really brings up the theme of comfort zones. What do we do that's normal in our comfort zones? And what are we willing to maybe do to get out of our comfort zones a little bit? So what I would love to hear right now is, what do you know about comfort zones? If anyone is willing to jump in and turn their mic off, or turn their mic on, sorry, and contribute, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But please feel free to put it in the chat. What do we know about comfort zones?
For comfort zones, I think of like when you're a kid and you have like that special toy or blanket or something that you hold on to that makes you feel safe. Like maybe something you took to help you get through like your first day of daycare or your first day of school or to your first sleepover or something like that.
So something that is safe or maybe provides comfort, right? That's
yeah,
great.
like something that like a security blanket, you know, just
So
something that reminds you of home or, you know,
okay.
where you
So
feel good.
It could be a physical, tangible thing. It could also be affiliated with a feeling or an emotion attached to it. Steve's, I can see kind of his picture right now. He's got a pillow, so something that, you know, brings comfort when you're sleeping too. Any of my athletes, what do you know about comfort zones? I can't see all. I'd love to hear
that it's the extent of what we can do or are comfortable to do.
That's Robbie who said that, right? Robbie, is that you? Okay,
yes.
Great. So it's the extent of what you're comfortable to do and what you can do. So that's kind of like your boundary of what you're comfortable with and what you actually can do versus perhaps can't. Thanks for sharing that. So Robbie, if you don't mind if I ask, in swimming, if you were to pick one stroke that was in your comfort zone, what would it be? Would you feel comfortable sharing
Butterfly?
that? Butterflies in your comfort zone, because guess what? The first thing I would say that's out of my comfort zone would be butterfly. So I don't know if any of you remember when you first started training butterfly and how hard it was to think, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this dolphin kick and pull and stay in the water in a somewhat structured body position all at one time? Dear gosh, I remember the fear in my eyes thinking, how am I going to do this, right? So when I work with athletes, one of the things we talk about a lot is really being able to identify what is in the comfort zone versus currently what is out. So I like that example, Robbie. So for you, training your stroke butterfly, easy peasy lemon squeezy, it's in your comfort zone. Whereas maybe a different stroke would give you that out of comfort feeling. Delaney, thank you for jumping in here. You say in the pool, sometimes it's hard to push yourself out of your comfort zone, especially in hard sets. Yes, because your mindset becomes set survival, or I just got to finish them, right? Or how am I going to set myself up for success so I can get through the set, not thinking, wow, this is a great opportunity to maybe do something that might be hard or challenging in addition to survival, right? Tegan, you worry about how to do fly. Yeah. And DQing. Yeah. Because if you do something wrong or different or out of scope, does that, you know, it's out of your comfort zone, but then is there a success failure attachment to it? Thanks for bringing that up. I just want to see if there's any, okay, distance freestyle. Yeah. So anything hard, we kind of affiliate with being outside of our comfort zone. Good. I'm going to jump in there. So comfort zones, when we start looking at kind of the information we know, number one, they feel safe. It's easy. It's usually attached to a symbolic low sign of effort. So for me, it's freestyle. It's easy. I feel safe. I look good doing it. I know that I'm going to get great feedback from a coach because my pull is good. My timing is great. I go into the wall smooth. So any chance I get to stay in my comfort zone in a set, I'm going to pick free because there's no challenge for me and I have control. Okay. Also, change is really hard. Steve, I see you want to jump in there. Please feel free.
This is such an important point that you brought up, Erin, and I just want to add from my perspective, you know, really just on the performance side, is that remember at times when you go out and swim a personal best, right, and have pushed yourself to a new level, this is something you've never ever done before. So you've actually extended your boundaries, right, your comfort zone immediately. And you should think of that in training. Unless you're prepared to do that, then the reward that you're looking for in races won't happen. And this is where you've got to understand the role of your coaches, because you should expect that the good coaches, the great coaches, the coaches that are really trying to help you, their job is fundamentally to show you where your true comfort zone is, not the one that you surround yourself, not the cotton wool you put around yourself. They're showing you where your boundaries are, which are, I guarantee, a long way out from where you may think they are. So, give your coaches a break at times when they're pushing you. It's their job, because they're looking at you with the big picture, not just you here and now. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's really a meaningful commentary too for all of my athletes in this group, and then coaches too, to say how important it is to have that conversation with your coach, to talk about what the comfort zone is and what does that actually feel like to move it a little bit. So we know that we like routine. And if COVID has taught us anything, that uncertainty is hard. We have now lived with it for a year, and we're becoming pros at being adaptable, even though sometimes it's really challenged us, that we can break routine. We can do things that are hard. You have proven that this year. A lot of you have been flexible with being online at school, being in and out of the water with new restrictions, dealing with the challenges of restrictions in the water. You've proven that you can do that. So I'm going to invite you all to do a little bit of a reflection piece right now. I would love for you to get your journals out right now. And I'd like you to think a little bit about maybe one time during COVID that you have got outside of your comfort zone this year. Okay. One time, just maybe one time. Tegan, thanks for, go ahead. Sorry, Steve. Yeah.
And then the only other thing I'd suggest to everyone, of course, is you should really almost have a little mantra in the back of your head. This is swimming, challenging yourself. What is the worst thing that can happen? You might feel a bit uncomfortable for a few minutes. That's it. Okay. So take that attitude, and it's your life, your chance, your opportunity. And with each passing minute, then you sort of lost that opportunity. So keep taking it.
And not being afraid to challenge that. We kind of like to equate a comfort zone kind of being like a bubble. Oops, sorry. Where we're not asking you to pop the bubble and go outside of it. We're just asking you to move the bubble just a little bit, like just stretch it, push it. We're not asking you to go way outside of it or jump outside of it. But as you're doing this reflection, I want you to think about, what does your bubble look like right now during COVID? What would your comfort zone stroke be? And as you get back into the water, and we get this opportunity to train with no kind of those expectations are going to be different when we get back into the water. What is challenging your comfort zone going to look like? I invite you all to just take a minute and think about that. So it might mean when you're thinking about a stroke, you don't pick the best stroke to swim. In that hard set, you pick the one that you're struggling with. I know Elaine will give an example often of a golfer that didn't like to play in the rain, and being open to an opportunity to play in the rain. I encourage a lot of my athletes to train with things that maybe don't seem normal. I think there was a story about Michael Phelps, I want to say in the Beijing Olympics, I think it was, either his sports psych or his coach, I can't remember, had him train with a hole in his goggles so that when he performed, if he got water in his eyes, he knew how many pulls to have. So I think what I'm trying to say here is this is an extraordinary opportune time for you to play with your comfort zone. And it might just mean expanding it just a little bit as you get back in the water. Steve mentioned the concept of time and personal best, and we're going to spend a little bit of time at the end with an exercise about getting you to think about those numbers. Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is really recognizing those little steps that you take when you do get out of your comfort zone. It's important to celebrate those little victories. Rome wasn't built in a day. There's that famous saying. Comfort zones aren't this magical place. You have control over them. And I think by challenging yourself little by little to get outside of it, you can see some really amazing things happen when you're open to it. And if there's any questions about that, if you want to save them for later too, I'm happy to give you some more examples of how to implement that in your training practices, because sometimes being uncomfortable is a good thing. Okay. It comes down to mindset and being okay with it. May not look perfect. It may not feel great. And it may mean I fail a few times. but then the learning that's affiliated with it, that you grow with it, becomes invaluable to your training and your development as an athlete. Okay. At the end of the day, we want to turn your weaknesses into strengths, and we want to be able to explore how, as an individual athlete, you all have these amazing qualities that we can tap into and see what might set you apart. Like what takes ordinary to extraordinary. And I think when we play with comfort zones, you see that magic happen sometimes when you least expect it. So we're going to move into a little bit of an activity with mindset right now. And I want to give you enough time to do this. Oh, we got some stuff in the chat here. So before I do that. Okay, so dry lands, workouts. Yeah, absolutely, being open to feedback. And I think comfort zones, when you have conversations with your coaches and your athletes, not necessarily having to define every aspect of a comfort zone, but what are the stages? I saw an infographic one time on, I can't remember if it was on Instagram or Facebook, someone shared it, and it was a picture of a comfort zone, and it had it in stages that talked about growth and learning and what those little changes are like when you get out of your comfort zone. It's not this huge step or this huge change. It's sometimes simple as making a different conscious effort about what you're trying to do, or changing your mindset about how you might view success and failure of one little action. And I think that goes really hand in hand with the goal setting that you set out for yourself too when you get back in the water. So with that being said, we're going to do a little activity. Okay. I want everyone to get their journal out and get their pen out. Okay. And what we are going to do is I'm going to give you 45 seconds. Okay. And you're going to number 1 to whatever. You're going to write out each number. I'm just going to get my timer here. Okay. In your journal. And you are going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going to see, you're going to go through as many as you can. I'm going to give you 45 seconds to do it. Okay. So everyone get your pen and your paper handy. I'm going to get my timer, and you're going to have to write every number. Okay. So just bear with me here. We're going to try this activity and we're going to see what happens. There's no rules other than you have to write each number down. Okay. So we're going to start. Everyone have their pen and paper handy. I'm just going to make sure I have a stopwatch here. Good. Okay. We are going to start in 3, 2, 1, begin.
Go team, go.
Okay, stop, pens down. If you feel comfortable, I would love for you to put your number in the chat. You don't have to though, okay? And just notice which number you got to, okay? If you feel comfortable, put it in the chat. And I want you to think a little bit about how you viewed this challenge before we actually did it, when you heard what the instructions were, okay? What techniques did you actually use? So I want you to think about what worked, what didn't. Holy smokes, those are some high numbers. 53, 54, 37, 39, 45. Awesome. Okay, so holy smokes, Lauren. Wow, 58. That's impressive. Okay, so I didn't get you to set a goal for this. Okay, I wanted you to just kind of open-ended, go and try it. So I'd love to hear your feedback if you want to put it in the chat. What did you notice about your process and your techniques or strategies that you used? Anyone feel comfortable jumping in and sharing? Did you do anything in particular? Okay, so got sloppy with writing. So maybe your numbers weren't as legible at the beginning as they were at the end, because speed was really important. That's interesting. It kind of is like what happens in like the third part of a race when you know, sometimes when your technique suffers because you want to really hit your pace. Okay, anybody else? 5 started to look like S's. Okay, Shane, thanks for that. Yeah, so you became more fluid. Maybe things weren't as like direct or as pointed. No spaces. Yeah, so it was just fluid. You went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, good. Did anybody really struggle with this? Okay, and before you started, did anybody notice taking a deep breath or setting a goal, or was there any self-talk perhaps? You got distracted by things going on around you. Interesting, kind of like on the block when you have other people chattering and things going on in your environment. Good. Okay. So I just want you to notice what you did that maybe was helpful versus what was harmful. And of course, we like challenge here, and we are going to do it one more time. So the only instructions, the only rule change for this exercise right now is you must beat your score by at least 1. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Okay? That's the only rule I have. You must beat your score by at least 1. So whatever you think you need to do, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to kind of prepare. Maybe it's take a deep breath. Maybe it's set a goal. Whatever you need to do, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, okay? Just got to beat your score by 1. I'm going to start in 5 seconds here. Okay, I'm going to give you 45 seconds, and I'm going to count down from 3 like I did last time. So 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, stop, pens down. So if you feel comfortable, I invite you to put your number in the chat. And if you got one higher, I want you to write yes beside your number. Please feel free to put it in the chat. And if you didn't, that's okay. Yes, 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 yes. Everyone's crushing it. 1, 2 people, maybe not. That's okay. Yes, good. Okay, holy smokes. So for some of us, we had like drastic improvements. Maybe we I can't talk today, methodologically changed one thing. And we maybe made just like the smallest little change, and that was very beneficial. So a few of us have beat our first score, and I would like to hear from you. Did anybody change their technique? Did anybody change anything? Please feel free to jump in, turn your microphone on. Writing is even less legible, absolutely.
For me, I think I tried to focus too much that I got distracted by focusing.
Yeah, Robbie, what a great reflection. How many of us have done that in a race where we've overcompensated or we over-focused and we paid attention to too many details that we completely lost sight of what we were doing? Robbie, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's really important that a lot of us may have got a higher number, but the fact that one of you didn't, that happens all the time with my athletes. It's like, oh, I can do this easy, and then one little thing totally sets me in a totally different direction. And for you, it was hyper focus, which means you're over focusing, and therefore you're not able to manage those distractions. Great. Okay.
I found that my brain was going faster than my hand at some point. Like a good example I have here is my 42 and 43. If you can see that on the camera there.
Kinda, yep.
Yeah, I totally just biffed it on the 42 and 43. Like I kind of, like I was counting in my head, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my brain kind of like started skipping ahead and then forgot where I was at, if that makes sense.
It does.
I do that a lot when I do my distance races too, where my brain will get ahead of my body and I'll think I'm like 5 laps ahead of where, I actually am in my race.
That's really insightful, Tegan, because we call that outcome-based thinking instead of process. And when we train goal setting and we train being in the present, the here and now, we try to honestly think of where you are here and now. So we train our brains not to go 5 laps ahead. And we have to hope that the brain and the body are working together to manage that. And one thing you can do, just for those of you who are curious, one really great strategy is cue words. And I can talk to you a little bit about that at the end of the session if you're interested in learning more about that. Okay. So for those of you who changed up your technique, thanks for maybe putting that in. For those of you who didn't, maybe you were able to reach that goal, no problem. So why did you beat your first score? Anybody have any insight why you beat your first score? Anybody? You're focused on it? Yeah, usually it relates to goal setting. We've set an intention, we've set a goal, okay? You knew your benchmark. Yeah, you knew where you were in relation to something you've done in the past, okay? Yeah, so we set a goal. That's kind of what comes out of this activity. But sometimes we set realistic goals and sometimes we don't set realistic goals, okay? So Shane's making a great comment here. I wasn't focusing too hard on each individual number and went off muscle memory. Yeah, so you were trusting yourself. You're trusting what you knew worked. Delaney, thank you for bringing up deep breathing, just to set yourself, right? The importance of calming your nerves, calming your expectations, okay? So there's some great strategies that you've mentioned here that you probably use in racing too, okay? So one of the comments I do want to make though is sometimes when we don't set goals that we can, well, first of all, when we don't set goals or when we set a goal that's really easy, we find that we do that sometimes in school too. For those of us who are students, kind of want to stay in our comfort zone. It's a safety net. The fear of failure can come in. Maybe we do this when we're setting times in sets, in training. You know, we haven't had competition in a while right now. So if we were to set some numbers, would it be a realistic or accurate evaluation of what we could swim? Well, we don't know that until we're back in the water. But I think what the point we're trying to make is the importance of setting little goals for yourself. And when you have that focus or when you have that intention, it affects the way you perform and it affects the way you train. Okay, so I just want to bring that to your attention. So bring that up. And I want to, oh, we got another comment here in the chat. One thing struggle, yeah, it's slower. Okay, so sometimes we've had personal experiences where it affects what we were able to do before. And if we're not able to replicate the same goal, we start to question it, right? So today during COVID, because we haven't been able to train in the same capacity and we've had different distractions and maybe things aren't what they used to be, we've been hearing across a bunch of different sports that it's really easy to go back into our comfort zones, to what we know, what we normally could swim, and create a safety net of time and space. So it felt good then, it was easy to do. So let's set that time for way higher than what I think I could actually swim because it's safe. Okay, so what I want to remind you of is when you go into the pool is to be realistic with the numbers that you feel maybe you can try to achieve. Okay, and think about the goals that you want to set as you return back in the water. So as you do get in the water and you can apply purposeful practice with other areas too in your training, not just being in the pool. It might be in relation to your mental training or your physical training, okay? So when you go into something, we want to remind you the importance of not just going through the motions, being intentional in what you're doing, okay? And for me, that means being specific with what that intention is. So for example, making sure you name a number or you list a number. Or if you're working on one aspect of your stroke, you're really zooming in on that one specific thing. So for example, it might be in relation to my pull. It might be in relation to my body position, okay? We always want you to be setting realistic goals. And as we don't really have benchmarks since we haven't been in the water or we've been in and out of the water, you really have the freedom and the creativity right now to explore kind of a whole bunch of options and play around with what those benchmarks are and what they might be. So being able to have some meaningful conversations with your coaches about what that actually looks like right now, okay? So those realistic goals and those process goals help you stay on track. They help you stay focused. We always want to encourage you to share your goals with others. So whether it be your lane mate, whether it be your coach, talking about what you're actually trying to work on that day it holds you accountable and it brings you back to what am I trying to do? And it's so cool when you get to see someone else reach their goals and celebrate that success with them because they're more likely going to do that for you. And that, as we know, really helps with your social motivation. Okay. And the last thing I want to bring up is, as you return to water or you return to your training, whenever that may be, is to celebrate every little success, every little thing that you do that looks good, feels good, that you're really proud of. You can do hard things, and we've done hard things for the last year. And as you get back in the water, you get to play. It's so exciting. And I really encourage you to be creative and to be limitless with what you go in and do in the water. I know things may have seemed really tough when you first started out, and it may be a little bit ugly when you get back in the water in terms of how things feel, but building confidence comes in little steps, right? And maybe it's getting in the water. Well, maybe it's just about having a great streamline entry. Maybe it's about just focusing on your breathing or setting little goals or using positive self-talk. I want to encourage you to think of the different strategies you have to help you just have a really good day at the pool. Okay. So one thing I want you to walk away with is what we call goal windows in swimming. And you may not be able to use these yet, but I'm going to encourage you to start thinking about different types of goals. So goals come in many shapes, sizes, and forms. We have our SMART acronym that many of you have heard of. You've probably done some goal setting in school, but we really want to focus on process goals when you get back into the water. Let go of your outcome, let go of rankings, times, and such in order to be reflect. We want to make sure that you're setting process goals as you get back in the water. But then when you start hitting pace times and you start attaching values to it, we want to make sure that it's realistic and that it's meaningful. Okay, we know that consistency is important with goals. And I hear that comment a lot from my swimmers as well. I just want to hit my PB. Okay, you're not always going to hit your PB. So what does a good swim feel like? What does a good swim actually mean? Sometimes answering those questions instead of the time affiliated with a good swim can be pretty impactful when you get back into the water. So I encourage you to think about what your standards are. What does that feel good swim look like and feel like, and to have those conversations with your coach and take away those little tidbits of what areas to focus on and then build on it from there. Okay, so what I've done is we've put up this goal window kind of template for each of you to take back when you get back in the water once you start assigning times to things. Okay, this is not meant to be right when you get back in the water and you looking at times and pacing. This is meant to give you a tool later on once you start working on consistency. Okay, so we've put three kind of little prompts, three little questions for you to maybe spend some time within your journal. So at the top, we have your personal best, right? Which is we're always trying to achieve. Everyone loves that PB number. It looks good, feels good, and it's great. It's very outcome oriented, but it's not always consistent, okay? Underneath, we have a time that we're okay with. So maybe when you're training in hard sets, you take some time to identify what time you would be okay with. And then at the bottom, we have the slower than I'd like comment. Now that's not meant to be a safety net as much as it is to be kind of the bottom foundation for where you are swimming that day. Now you can use this in different types of sets, different types of drills and exercises, but you can also use this to specify the goals that you're really working on with pacing once competition does come back into play. And I know Elaine and I would change this template once you're in competition, but we just kind of wanted to prompt you to start thinking about what do these numbers actually mean to me, and what kind of conversations can I have with my coach to talk about what this means for myself and my training. So for the coaches in the room, this little template is a great way to have a quick check-in or a little debrief. You can use whatever language in each one of these boxes. This template isn't meant to be a comparison with other people. To my athletes out there, this is meant to be for you individually. We know that you can unpack some of these prompts kind of with questions. What do I need to do to achieve what's right in the middle? What does that look or feel like? And then what do I need to do to reach the top window? And when I'm swimming my best, what does it feel like and look like? And can I actually replicate it? Okay, so I encourage you all to write this down just to kind of start thinking a little bit about what I need to do to reach time, the time that I want, and consistent time. That might be in terms of pacing, and it might be in terms of splits. Okay, so I want to give you some freedom and creative liberty to use this template however you'd like. And kind of the last thing I want to touch on today before I open up questions and conversations is just the importance of empowering yourself right now. As you're kind of getting ready for a return to train and getting back into the water, take some time to think about what you want to do this summer. Can you challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone a little bit? What can you do to push the bubble just a little, enough to find a space where you can grow? I encourage you to talk to your coaches a little bit about maybe what are 1 or 2 things you could be working on or start preparing and planning to do, whether it be in the off season or whether it be over summer holidays. Does it involve a different type of physical activity? Does it involve meeting with them and maybe getting some visualization exercises? Okay. So right now you have nothing to lose. We want you to go for it. We want you to try new things, really tap into your creative side. That's where the fun and the magic happens. It's the greatest opportunity right now is you are not in competition to have some fun with no expectations and just to try new things and learn and grow and kind of spend some time figuring out who you are and what you want and what you need to be at your best, so that when you do get the opportunity to be in the water, it's a really special place to be. Okay. So I think one cool exercise too, some of you, maybe if you've joined in our previous seminars, we've talked a lot about gratitude and practicing gratitude with everything you do. It helps you with your mindfulness practice, being in the here and the now. And I encourage you all that when you do get that opportunity to get back in the pool, that maybe you just take a moment to just kind of reflect and stop where you are, smell the chlorine, take a look around, see your friends, look at your coach, and just when you dive in with purpose, for yourself, and really take time to honor all the work you've put in this off season, because as athletes and as coaches too, this has been an extraordinary year to show the resilience each one of you has. And it's only going to help you be that much better of an athlete and a coach, because you have learned so much about yourself along the way. So thank you very much. This is kind of the end of the formal part of our presentation.